Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Tom Miller from Leaders Building Leaders, and there's one thing that I know as a former board member, an executive director to charter school boards, and a board trainer. There's no more important job of a board and a head of school to ensure that its meetings are purposeful and actionable and is just focused on the most important things. And here's what I mean. There's many board meetings that I've attended that I really wonder by the end of the meeting whether or not any important information was actually discussed. Now, this is not to belittle the board members, right, or even the head of school. They're talking about they're trying to summarize a month of action into a very short window. But it's so important how that a board conducts its meetings in an effective way because number one, charter schools are multi-million dollar public enterprises, right? I mean, the state authorizer and the community trusts that board to govern and appropriately expend the funds that the school is operating within legal compliance, minimizing risk. Students are learning. Students are safe. It's a healthy learning environment. Um, and so, properly conducted board meetings are fundamental to the school's overall leadership. So, what I wanted to share with you all is just a couple pieces here. Number one, I mean, the number one reason why charter schools close is really because the actions and the decisions, right? Actions and decisions of the board. And actions could be non actions, right? Like just ignoring the problem or not being aware of the problem, or they could also be poor decisions, right? Based upon bad information. And roughly 2/3 of all charter schools close because of financial mismanagement in one way or another. So, the number one warning sign to any closure is the failure to produce timely audits, correct audits, right? To conduct basic required oversight. This is the number one sign, right? So, if your reports are late or inaccurate, right now you're already in phase two of your school potentially closing. So just what I want to share, just a couple tips here on setting your monthly agenda, right? Your yearly calendar, and what should be provided to the board on a monthly basis. So number one, how often? Boards should meet. Depending upon their age. So if they're a startup and you're in year one or year zero, maybe twice a month a board may meet. But those first 5 years, just once a month is more than enough. Maybe not even more than 10 times per year. And the older the school gets, beyond 5 years, 6 to 8 times a year is more than enough, right? With strong committees, but also strong reporting data. And so, if you're too busy to meet, monthly, this should be a big part of your orientation as you're recruiting board members. They need to understand the time and effort that they're going to have to put in to ensure strong governance, right? And I believe that the work of the board really happens in committee meetings, and that's not what this little session is about. But it's a big part of the reporting that's going to actually occur during the actual meeting. So you want your board meeting, right, to be strategic, not reactive. So the older that the school gets in age, right, so 5 years or more, 80 to 90% of the time needs to be spent talking about the future of that school, not the present times. And this is where maybe one of the number one issues I see is that most board meetings are just about what's happening right now. It's just kind of a report, right? And so your time is precious. Most board members are full-time employees somewhere else, so they don't have time, right, to listen to what all the things that happened during a month. That's information you could put in the monthly report. So the age of the charter, if it's in year one, right, that's where most of the time is spent about the present and a little bit of time, maybe 80-20, 80% on the present and 20% on the future. Compared to year five, you're flipping that. 80% of the board meeting it needs to be focused on expansion, the vision, the long-term goals, where they're moving forward. So you want to make sure that you're, staying in strategic mode, not reactive mode, right? And so highly effective boards, they have an outcomes-based calendar. So in this, download, you're going to get an example of an outcomes-based calendar, an example of a focused agenda, and an example of a board report, right? An executive director report. It's a template that you can take, yourself and fill that out. But so the outcomes-based calendar, and also you'll get an email also that will, share with you a separate lesson on our outcomes-based calendar. But the outcomes-based calendar is just to show that, hey, every single month, right, what are the specific items that are going to come up for either action or discussion. Now, I know that every single year I'm going to have to talk about budget, right? I'm going to be approving a budget, or I'm going to be approving personnel, right? So what months do those, generally happen? And what you do is you start looking at your past, board meeting agendas, and you start, dropping these per month, right? So I'm like, well, heck, I know every year, we have to update the handbook and all the policies, right? So if I want that done by April, it's going to take me 3 months. So I know in January, like my governance committee needs to start focusing on revamping and reading any policies so we can, do a good 90-day, timeline to get the approval of the policy. So in April, that's where we're going to approve our policies, right? In May, we're going to approve all hires, right? Or April, we'll see our first budget for the upcoming year. Or every quarter of the year, we're going to get a deep dive academic. And every quarter of the year, we're going to get a finance. So maybe you do those in September and October. Either way, as a board, start to space out the really important actions that you have to do, right? That that you do on an annual basis. And this prevents, the school from overloading its agenda during certain months, which happens, And so, I personally believe, right, that nothing should get on your board agenda unless it specifically provides you information in regards to the current, the school's short or long-term goals, right? Everything should have to fight for its life, in my opinion, to get on the board agenda. In fact, every minute you spend engaged in a trivial many is a minute you failed spending the vital few. So when you take this outcomes-based calendar, so now I know, hey, in July we do our annual retreat. In August we do our first board meeting of the year, and this is where we get an update on all the new initiatives, right? It's our first enrollment. I mean, whatever it is, you're mapping out those 10 meetings that you have per year ahead of time. So at the end of every board meeting, I can open up my outcomes-based calendar and say, okay, great, it's October. So in November, we're going to get a finance report. So finance team, you be ready. Make sure you send your report 7 days in advance. Governance committee, you are doing an overview of the new head of school evaluation, or whatever, like it might be. Like, you already know these things are there. And then at the end of the meeting, you say, okay, what do we talk about this month that needs to be on next month's agenda, right? So there might be 1 or 2 action items, and you're letting people know exactly like so they can be prepared, right? It's an 80-20 principle. So 20% of your actions are going to get 80% of your output. Your job as a board is to narrow your issues down to 2, because you can't handle more than 2 big issues. You've already worked all day. Don't spend 3 or 4 more hours in a board meeting. It's a bad decision, right? So the challenge there is to identify what are the 1 or 2 issues that need to be tackled, right? So let's just say if you had a 90-minute agenda, the first 30 minutes could be focused on how well are the students performing. The second 30 minutes could be, finance, legal, operation reporting. And the last 30 minutes could be, hey, what went well this month as a board meeting, or or some sort of, you can take these governance strengthening exercises, or from the program Navigate, and just get better as a board. So first 30, how well are we doing, right? And it's not 30 minutes. It might be like 15 minutes of being educated how we handle discipline, right? Or how our exceptional children's program works, or how our new academic program that we just adopted is being implemented. Whatever it is, it's a great opportunity to inform and educate the board, right? They don't need to sit there and listen to you, go through a report. Their job is how well are we doing, and your job is how we will do it, right? So you look at the example agenda that I put in there. So who sets the agenda? Lead administrator, right? The head of school and the board chair should work on it. When does it start? It starts at the end of the previous meeting. I just shared what are the 2 or 3 things that we got. Great, let's get here. Then maybe 48 hours after the board meeting, the head of school and the board chair get together. Hey, what went well at the board meeting? What are some things we need to talk about? Get some clarity and alignment, and then get a draft of the agenda out to the rest of the board, and give them a week to give you feedback. And then within 2 weeks prior to the next board meeting, you've already got your agenda set. You've got all the key items, right? It's got the top 2, challenges. Now, maybe something comes up in those last, 2 weeks, and you can always spend the first couple of minutes of a board meeting changing the agenda, right? But it's 2 weeks prior, the agenda is done, and 1 week prior, all the committee reports, the head of school report, everything comes to one person, right? Or in one place, and so everybody knows where to go 7 days prior to the board meeting to look at all of the information. Now, here's a little strategy. If you're a head of school or a board chair, one of the things that I used to do is once the board meeting packet was sent out, I used to reach out to every board member and say, hey, just want to make sure you got the packet. Have you had a chance to read it? Because I want to make sure that I've answered all your questions. Because what you want to do is in that week's times, you want to make sure you've got clarity and there's going to be no surprises at that board meeting, right? Has everything been answered? Because I want to be able to answer those board members' questions prior. So during the board meeting, everybody's present. Every presenter stays on time. Any report, 3 to 5 minutes. So when I'm creating my board agenda, I'm actually putting times, right? Times for every single item, right? And someone at my board meeting is my timekeeper, right? They are saying, hey, look, this is for 15 minutes. You're already up to minute 8, right? So by minute 10 as the board chair, I'm like, okay, is this an action item? Do we have a vote? Do we have a motion? Do we need to table this, right? Whatever it is, you gotta stay on time. So presentation, 3 to 5 minutes. And board members, be prepared to ask questions. I mean, this is really the key of being an effective board, is asking questions, because they're going to unlock. So remember, you're not reading the report. You could have some sort of dashboard, right? Because it should be part of the goal. And if you take a look at the executive director report, like we've got all those aspects in there: organizational health, academics, enrollment, all these pieces that would inform the board. So they don't have to read the report. You're just basically giving them the high level of information, but then you're also noting, hey, here's what I need. This is an action item, right? And you're hitting them. So that's kind of a very short version of leading purposeful meetings. We have a longer version of this, training and all the key aspects you'll need in our Board Leadership Academy called Navigate. Check out the link here, but accept these 3 free gifts that I'm going to give you. 1 is a example of an outcomes-based calendar. 2 is an example of an agenda. And 3 is the executive report. So I'm Dr. Tom Miller. I hope this added value to you. Keep making a difference, everybody. Thank you.